So to them, looking back at it, I probably just projected the persona of not being a very nice person, which is really unfortunate. I've changed a lot since I graduated college 3 years ago, and in this video I'm going to talk about why. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah. If you're new here, I upload videos every Monday and Friday, so feel free to stick around and subscribe. In my last video, it was the part 3 in the series wrapping up, opening up about my OCD, anxiety, and depression, and I mentioned in that video I wasn't sure if I was going to go into another video about that or not. This video is going to be a little bit on a separate topic, but it's still going to be kind of a video that gets you to think and something that's just really been on my heart and I wanted to share with you guys. All that to say, if you have not checked out that series, it will be linked in the description box down below, as well as in the eye up above. You should, I put it in a whole playlist for you guys. I highly recommend you checking it out. I am a little sick today, so if I sound weird, that is why. Also, now I'm using a microphone, so yay for upgrading equipment rather than just using my phone audio. This microphone is actually my dad's, but I'm using it and I'm very thankful, so thank you, Dad. So also, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Let's go ahead and get into the video. This isn't a part of the series, but I am going to go in a similar format, as in I have typed up my notes ahead of time and I'm going to kind of be reading off of that because that just really helps me kind of process my thoughts easier that way. So first off, I would like to say a lot of the reason I changed as a person was because I had a really bad OCD during college. I go into that in a lot more detail in a separate video. I will link for you guys in the eye up above, as well as in the description box down below. I will link that specific video where I open up about my OCD and that kind of things during college. I highly recommend you check that out. I will say though that OCD put me in my own mental prison. I like how this way of describing it, because there really was a prison. It was not self-inflicted, but it was really hard to get out. It definitely put a strain on my social life because I was so caught up in performing my compulsions that it affected how I interacted with others. It also made it hard because I didn't discuss the fact that I had OCD with other people. So I was trying to kind of give off the persona of like not having problems, for lack of a better way of explaining it. But I knew I had OCD, but I didn't want other people to knew I had OCD. So to them, looking back at it, I probably just projected the persona of not being a very nice person, which is really unfortunate. I am very shy, so if I don't know you very well, I might seem really quiet, but once you get to know me better, I open up a lot easier that way. That's just personally how I am. But I feel like looking back, I can see how a lot of my classmates and that kind of thing would just think I was a rude person, but it was probably just because I had a really bad OCD and I was just so stressed out. I know it kind of makes it seem like I'm giving excuses, but I'm just kind of explaining my thought process and that kind of thing. So that is the first reason why I've changed a lot since then. I don't really have OCD as much now. I know I'm still not over the whole anxiety and OCD and that kind of thing with higher education, so that's not my sole reason I don't want to get a master's. It's just I feel like not the best for me right now. I might get a master's in the future, but I'm not really sure. But at this point in my life, I don't really have OCD too much because a lot of my stress and stuff like that has shifted or been relieved, thankfully. So that has allowed me to change as a person. Another big reason I want to talk about that contributed to me changing as a person was that I started making decisions based on standards I have rather than just following my parents' rules or the school's rules. I did go to a Christian school growing up, which means that I did have more rules than other kids. Obviously, if you were to go to a public school or even homeschooled. I also grew up in a Christian home, which I'm extremely grateful for. I'm extremely grateful that I grew up in a Christian home and that I went to a Christian school. And I think my parents did a great job raising my brother and I. Also, regardless of growing up in a strict home, whether you want to label that or not, children are going to do things because their parents tell them to, because based on their age, they don't have the cognitive ability to make those decisions. Also, rules are good for children, and it's good for them to have boundaries because it gives them a sense of stability. But that is another tangent that I'm not going to go down, and I'm aware that I do not have children of my own, but I can see the way my parents raised me, and I know how I thought as a child. So looking back, I can see how it was good for me to have rules, because it did give me a sense of stability. After I graduated college, I didn't have the rules of a school to follow, but yes, I did still live with my parents, but I made more decisions for myself based on personal standards. I think that everyone needs to come to that point, the point where they do things because it is their standard or set of beliefs, not because it's their parents' set of beliefs or their parents' standards. I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying, though, because I think you should still honor your parents. That is biblical. I've spoken about this on my channel before, but I am a Christian. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's important to come to the point where you know why you do certain things or don't do certain things. And when you're a child, a lot of the reasons you do or you don't do things is simply because your parents tell you to, and that's fine. But when you grow up, you need to know why you do or don't do certain things or believe a certain way. There's a number of reasons this is important, but one of them is that your parents aren't always going to be here, and you need to know why you do something. For example, one of my personal standards is that of church. I faithfully go to church because it is important for spiritual growth, and also it's biblical. I'm not saying I faithfully go to church to pat myself on the back or say that I'm a super Christian, because I'm definitely not. I'm just using this as an example because this is one of my personal beliefs, but also I mentioned it is in the Bible. Yes, my parents also faithfully go to church. When I was younger, I went to church with my parents. I'm glad they took me, and I think it is really important. But now I go to church because it is my personal conviction, and as a sign of this, I still go to my church if my parents are out of town. My parents and I go to the same church, so obviously they'd be able to tell if I was there or not. Another personal standard, and this might be an even better example, is a personal standard of modesty. I don't want to go too deep into this topic because this could be a whole separate video on its own, but essentially I think it comes down to this: what is modest for one person may not be modest for another person. Let me explain. For example, me wearing pants is modest for me, but another woman could feel immodest wearing pants, and that's fine. That is between her and the Lord. This is another example of personal standards and how I've changed as a person. Now I wear pants because it is my personal standard, and to those of you who didn't grow up in a similar background, this example may sound absurd to you. I'm aware of that. But once again, I want to say I think my parents did a great job raising my brother and I in no way want to come off as complaining for how I was raised. Another factor that has changed me as a person is being in the real world. And hear me out. I was in school from the age of 4 to the age of 21. That is a long time. And most of that period, I was just focused on getting good grades and doing my best in school. I didn't have too many other concerns. Now, yes, I did work off and on whenever I was in college, which I think is good, and I did have to, pay for things and that kind of thing. But essentially, my main goal was doing the best in school that I could. So all that to say, I didn't really have to mold what my personal standards were during that time because I had rules at a school to follow. After I graduated college, I got a retail job. As I mentioned, I had student jobs while I was in college, but this was my first job in the real world. I learned a lot and changed in that retail job. It was definitely a different environment than when I was in school. Also, since then, I bought my first car. Going through that process and working on building my credit since then has also grown me as a person. My anxiety, depression, and OCD has given me a different perspective. So that's a whole other tangent. I feel like I just go right into that. So buying a car, building my credit. Essentially, I guess you could kind of sum those up into things of growing up or doing more adult decisions, making more adult decisions. So buying a car did change me as a person. Another thing that has changed me as a person is my anxiety, depression, and OCD, and that has given me a different perspective, and I would say it has made me a more empathetic person. An empath is someone who feels another person's emotions and can see their situations from their point of view. It's easier for me to empathize with someone going through a panic attack, for example, because I've been there and I know what it feels like to have a panic attack. I would say I'm a more complex person since graduating college because I've grown up a lot since then through the different things that I've gone through that I mentioned, previously. I don't want to say I'm an emotional person because to me that makes it seem like I cry all the time, and I don't. But I am an emotional person in that I love deeper, I feel joy deeper, I feel sadness deeper. Even something like this whole video concept is something so different than what I would have done a few years ago. I guess in conclusion, this has been something that I've been thinking about lately and I wanted to make a video about it. If anything, I hope it got to you to think as well. Maybe look back and see how you've changed as a person. It can be really interesting to reflect. And I'm sorry if it did just seem like I was reading a letter that entire video, but as I mentioned, that's just how I can really get my thoughts into one. It's just easier for me to write them out rather than, because I feel like I would say a lot, which I probably still do, and it's just easier for me to organize my thoughts if I think about it ahead of time and then film a video. So as I mentioned, this has just been really something that I've been thinking a lot of and was just kind of interesting, I guess, to me. I definitely think that it's opened up a way of making future videos on these topics alone, because it kind of was broad and I did, I guess, kind of go more through an overview perspective throughout this video. But once again, if you did like it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Feel free to stick around and subscribe. I upload videos every Monday and Friday. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.